Imagine this for a second. Every single year, millions of tourists and devoted pilgrims flock to the stunning city of Venice, Italy. They walk into the breathtaking St. Mark's Basilica, they light their candles, and they kneel in reverent prayer before the holy relics of St. Mark. But what if they're completely mistaken? Like, what if, as some genuinely compelling historical clues suggest, they are unknowingly bowing down before the remains of history's greatest pagan conqueror? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a literally 2,000-year-old cold case. We are tracking the incredible, bloody, and honestly baffling journey of history's most valuable and contested corpse, Alexander the Great. You see, his sudden death wasn't the end of his story. In many ways, his dead body became this massive, empire-defining treasure that sparked wars, betrayals, and history's most audacious heists. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Mystery. Alexander or Saint? To really grasp this, transport yourself back to June 323 BC in Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq. Alexander the Great has just taken his final breath. He's only 32 years old, struck down by a sudden fever that stops his seemingly unstoppable conquests right in their tracks. He leaves behind this massive empire stretching from Greece all the way to India, but he leaves no clear heir, so a terrifying power vacuum opens up instantly. Now, to understand why his dead body became the center of this crazy geopolitical storm, we have to look at ancient tradition. The Macedonian burial law was incredibly strict. Basically, a new king could only be officially recognized by the army if he personally escorted and buried the previous king's body in the ancestral royal cemetery at Aige. Think of Alexander's corpse as the ultimate indisputable appointment letter for the next emperor. If you didn't have the body, well, you simply didn't get the job. Moving right along to Section 2, the key to power, Alexander. As Alexander lay dying, historical records say he handed his royal signet ring to Perdiccas, his most trusted cavalry commander. Holding that ring, Perdiccas claimed the role of regent. He knew absolutely for sure that he needed to get Alexander's body safely back to Macedonia to solidify his power. But it was June in Mesopotamia. The blistering heat was threatening to decay the empire's greatest asset, so Perdiccas spent 2 extravagant years and just rivers of wealth, hiring the best embalmers to flawlessly mummify the fallen king. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide that was forming. While Perdiccas was a traditionalist playing the long game to control the whole empire, another general, Ptolemy, was hatching a very different plan. Ptolemy was a sharp pragmatist. He realized this massive empire was definitely going to fracture, so he set his sights on the agricultural wealth of Egypt. But as a Greek outsider, Ptolemy needed a divine mandate to make the Egyptian people accept him. A prophecy had conveniently declared that wherever Alexander was buried, that land would be wealthy and unconquerable. To Ptolemy, Alexander wasn't just a dead friend anymore, he was the ultimate political recruitment tool. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to Ptolemy's plotting, Perdiccas commissioned a logistics officer named Aridaeus to build a funeral cart fit for a god. And calling it a cart actually scratched that. It was a rolling temple. It's almost hard to picture the sheer scale of this thing. Alexander's body was placed in a solid gold coffin, perfectly molded to his shape. Above it towered a 12 by 18-foot golden canopy with solid gold statues of Nike at every corner. It took 64 identical mules just to pull this unimaginable mountain of wealth, with massive bells ringing out for miles to announce the god king's approach. Which brings us to Section 3, History's Biggest Theft. So by late 321 BC, this breathtaking golden chariot finally begins its slow journey out of Babylon, fully intending to head north to Macedonia. Perdiccas thought he had the throne totally secured. But Ptolemy didn't need a massive, bloody army to pull off this heist. He just needed endless pockets. He literally just bought off Arhidius, the guy who built the chariot. When the procession reached Syria, instead of turning north, Arhidius suddenly diverted the rolling temple south, straight into Ptolemy's waiting arms in Egypt. Ptolemy then brilliantly placed the Greek conqueror into a vacant, sacred sarcophagus meant for an Egyptian pharaoh. Without speaking a single word, Ptolemy told the Egyptian people, "Your new god has arrived." You can imagine the reaction. When Perdiccas realized his golden ticket to the throne had been stolen right out from under him, he was livid. He marched his massive army down to Egypt to take the body back by force. But totally blinded by rage, he made a catastrophic tactical error. He forced his troops to aggressively cross the fast-flowing waters of the Nile. It was an absolute disaster. 2,000 of his own Macedonian soldiers either drowned or were literally eaten alive by crocodiles. That very night, his traumatized officers mutinied, snuck into his tent, and assassinated him. Ptolemy had won. Let's look at Section 4 now, from gold to glass. Let's move to our timeline here and see how this builds. With Perdiccas dead, the empire fractured for good. Ptolemy eventually moved Alexander to a magnificent tomb in Alexandria. But fast forward a few centuries, and things really start to go downhill for the Ptolemaic dynasty. Civil wars, famine, bankruptcy. By 89 BC, a desperate King Ptolemy X had totally run out of money to pay his mercenaries. His unthinkable solution? He melted down Alexander's solid gold coffin to mint coins, and unceremoniously dumped the conqueror's body into a cheap glass or alabaster box. Later, Cleopatra stripped the tomb of its remaining metals, and when the Romans finally conquered Egypt, the humiliation only got worse. In 30 BC, the triumphant Roman Emperor Augustus visits the tomb. While awkwardly placing a golden crown on Alexander, Augustus actually snaps off a piece of the mummy's nose by accident. When local guides nervously asked if he'd like to see the tombs of the Ptolemaic kings as well, Augustus delivered this arrogant, historical mic drop. "I came to see a king, not corpses." Ouch. Later, Emperor Caligula even looted the tomb to steal Alexander's ancient breastplate just so he could play dress-up. For the Romans, Alexander wasn't a god. He was just a prop for their own egos. Moving into Section 5, Christianity and the Missing Body. So, despite being treated like an ATM by bankrupt kings, Alexander's body was still there. Ultimately, it wasn't a rival monarch who erased Alexander from the map, it was a massive cultural shift. By the late 4th century, Christianity was the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. Between 389 and 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius I issued strict edicts outlawing pagan worship. To radical Christians in Alexandria, Alexander's tomb wasn't a historical monument, it was the headquarters of a heretical cult, because people were still worshiping him. An angry mob actually took to the streets and tore the tomb apart brick by brick, erasing it so completely that early Christian bishops mockingly preached, "Tell me, where is the tomb of Alexander? Show it to me." From that exact moment in the late 4th century, Alexander completely vanishes from the historical record, just gone. Over the modern era, archaeologists have launched more than 140 official, highly funded excavation attempts across Alexandria and Greece to find his remains. Tunnels dug, radar deployed, you name it. And nothing, not a single trace. Section 6, the truth of the Venetian theory. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the explosive theory from British historian Andrew Chugg. Chugg looked at the historical timeline like a detective board and found a glaring, incredibly suspicious coincidence. Right around 390 AD, Alexander the Great's world-famous mummified body utterly vanishes from all texts. Then, almost immediately after, in 392 AD, the mummified body of the Christian evangelist St. Mark magically appears in the exact same city of Alexandria. I mean, what a coincidence, right? His theory suggests an incredible final heist. As the Christian mobs were destroying the pagan monuments, the Alexandrian locals, desperate to save their beloved founder, pulled off a massive deception. They simply rebranded the pagan king. They claimed the mummified corpse was actually St. Mark. This brilliant disguise kept the body safe and worshipped for centuries. That is until the year 828 AD, when a group of Venetian merchants snuck into Alexandria, stole the supposed body of St. Mark, and smuggled the whole shebang across the sea to Italy, right into St. Mark's Basilica. If that sounds like pure fiction to you, just look at the physical clues. The very foundation of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice features an ancient stone block carved with a distinct Macedonian star shield. Even more wild? When researchers measured that stone block, its dimensions matched, millimeter for millimeter, the sarcophagus of Nectanebo II, the exact Egyptian pharaoh's tomb that Ptolemy originally used to bury Alexander. So the crucial point is, why don't we just test the bones in Venice and find out once and for all? Well, to this day, the Catholic Church has never permitted independent DNA or radiocarbon dating on the remains resting in St. Mark's. Perhaps there's a bit of institutional hesitation, a fear that if science unravels the mystery, they might have to rewrite a massive piece of religious and architectural history. Alexander the Great conquered the known world, but his legacy after death kind of became this wild mirror for human ambition. His body was a tool for kings to claim power, a piggy bank for the greedy, a trophy for the vain, and perhaps, finally, a disguised saint hiding in plain sight. It leaves us with a fascinating, provocative question. The next time you see footage of Venice, what truly lies beneath the altar of St. Mark's Basilica? Has the world's most famous missing person been right in front of us for the last 1,200 years? Really let that sink in. Thank you for joining us on this explainer, and keep questioning history.